Hello and welcome to YourTown television program. I'm your host, Paula Joy MacNab, and I am delighted to interview a very interesting man, a man I've known for a long time and have a great deal of respect for. He's a pillar of our community. He cares deeply about the affairs that go on, and I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. I think it's going to be quite educational and interesting for all of us. Welcome to the program, Dean Provence.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. And I invited you because you're a candidate for the Monterey Peninsula Water Board.
Right.
And I realize that it's probably important for our viewing audience to understand what exactly is the Water Board? What does the Water Board do?
Well, the Water Board was created in the late 70s after there was a drought. Mm-hmm. And they were basically charged with solving our water problem. You know, finding new water and making sure that when the next drought came, we were prepared. A lot of what they've done is conservation. So as realtors, we have to make sure all the toilets are changed and shower heads are changed. So the water district is the ones who were able to do that. Mm-hmm. So they are the legal entity that enforces those kind of rules. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to conserve quite a bit that way. So before they were formed, I think we were using 18,000 acre feet, and we're down to 12,000 acre feet. And we're actually using less water almost every year. So conservation is helping, but we don't have enough water still.
Right, and I want to get to that and talk about that. But I want people to understand kind of the background, because there's so much misinformation about water on our peninsula. Yeah. We hear the term water credits, which I would like to have you explain a little bit later. Okay. Dean and I just love our water credits. We're both realtors, so we deal with that on a daily basis. Yes. But water credits, and how should we as responsible people who live here on this beautiful peninsula be thinking about water? And that's kind of the overview of what I want to talk to you about today. But specifically, water is integral to life. We cannot live without water. And to have such violent opposition, maybe I shouldn't use the word violent, but diametrically opposed views to me seems very, I'll just say, fascinating. So I'd like to go into that a little bit later. So why did you choose to run? I mean, that's a huge commitment, Dean. You're a busy man.
Well, busy people get things done, right?
Good point.
So I was approached 5 years ago to run against the incumbent, lost by about 160 votes. And I wasn't really planning on running again. But an ex-mayor of Seaside called me on a Saturday and asked if I was going to run. And I said no.
And you weren't doing anything that afternoon, so you said sure?
No. I made a few calls, and then people started calling me and encouraged me to run. So Wednesday was the deadline. I got there Tuesday and put my hat in the ring.
Great.
And got my campaign manager from the last time. And I already had my signs from 5 years ago. I kept them, so I was ready to go.
So why are you qualified to run?
Well, I've been on top of all the issues in the peninsula for a long time. Being a realtor, we have a group called the Local Government Relations Committee that meets once a month, and we get together to share all the issues in every city and on the peninsula as a whole and in the county as a whole. And water is always a topic of discussion. And so being on that committee, I've stayed on top of those issues. Then I was also president in 2008, which you get statewide issues as well. So I've stayed on top of the water issues pretty closely for a long, long time. I've served on the MLS Listings Board, which is a multi-million-dollar board. So I know big budgets and things like that. So I'm comfortable on a board with a big budget.
Right, working in that arrangement. Yeah. And one of the things that's very front and center for us right now, and it's why I wanted to get you on today, is the ballot measure, Measure J. Yeah. And I know I've talked to many people, also being a realtor, I talk to people, and people are confused, Dean. People are confused. Can you give us a broad background of what Measure J is, and then give us some thoughts about how you personally feel about it?
Well, Measure J was Measure O before. I mean, it's not new. It's trying to publicly owned Cal-Am. Measure J has a lot more support this year. It's a very passionate issue because people feel like no one should make a profit on such a basic need, right? Which makes sense. And most systems out there are publicly owned because that's the way they were started. You know, if you start a city, you got to have water, sewer, electric, and gas, and so it's one of the basic utilities that cities develop into their city plan. Unfortunately, in the 60s, we sold out to Cal-Am at that time, and over the progress of time, Cal-Am has kept buying other privately owned water systems that people kind of gave up running and built what we have today. So there's a lot of feelings behind Measure J and buying Cal-Am and making that the right thing to do. There have been some municipalities that have bought their water systems. And so I've gone to some of the meetings to hear those successes, and they're glad that they did that. And, you know, some of them bought those systems and they were in poor condition. So even though they were paying $88 million, they needed $102 million.
Well, that was,
you know, things like that.
Something that I wanted to address with you is, what are we, say we do vote yes and it goes through, right? What are we actually buying, and what are our potential costs in the future? There's always what I call unexpected consequences of things. So that to me is a huge question in my own mind personally, and I know that people have. Can you speak to that? Well,
the one thing I have a little issue with Measure J is there's no vote of the people once we find out what feasible is. When we find out what that cost is, the water district makes that decision. Now, yes, they're voted by the people, and hopefully they'll make a decision on the part of the people. But if they think that $1,000 extra a year on your taxes is feasible, we all get to pay that. So not knowing that number and not having the people weigh in, you know, with a vote, that's hard for me.
So let me clarify, because I agree with you. So in my reading of the ballot, which I brought with me, is I read it as a yes vote. My yes vote, to just make it personal here, says that I'm saying I am voting for a feasibility study, period. So that's not what you're explaining to us. Is that correct?
Well, it's a two-part. So the first part is a feasibility study.
Correct.
But if the water district deems it feasible, they are charged with going forward no matter what.
Regardless.
Yeah, so it's their decision and their decision only to go forward with the takeover. And that would be by eminent domain or negotiating with Cal-Am to buy it. Cal-Am has said we're not for sale. So, you know, when you have a entity that doesn't want to sell, the only way to take that over is by going to court and getting an eminent domain process to get a settlement to come up with a number to buy them.
So, Dean, doesn't that also include potentially huge legal fees?
Yeah. And
so how do we think about that as a consumer?
Well, it's all our money. You know, we're paying for it all, which is another heartburn. But and there was one city that tried to buy their water system, and they failed, and they had to pay their legal fees and the water district's legal fees. So whoever loses gets to pay it all. And that's just the gamble you take. And I think the legal fees were tens of millions for that city.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So give us some of your personal thoughts on what you will do if elected.
Well, I just want to make sure that, you know, what feasible is, because most of the people I talk to are elderly, and they want lower water rates right now. And so, you know, is the test of feasibility that we can buy Cal-Am and not affect our price of water at all? Is that feasible, or a little more, or a little more than that? So once we find out what's feasible, I want to make sure that we have town hall meetings to get the weigh-in of the people, because I think they still need to have a say even though they don't get a vote.
Exactly. Yeah. So tell us more about talk about the desalinization plant, because again, there's a lot of misinformation, what that is, what it isn't, where it is, what it costs. Speak to that, please. Well,
we're down to this is the only solution at this point. And the question is, Do we need it? Do we need it this size? No, those kind of issues. And my feeling is we do need it. We need it, and if we don't need it today, we're going to need it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And we've come this far, why stop the process? I mean, it's already been stopped once because the regional desal plant that is this desal plant just been taken over, had issues, in the past. So they picked the ball up and they're running with this. And so with the ocean right there, and we have all these water issues, it seems like a no-brainer that we would use the ocean as a water source. And the reason I'm passionate about the desal plant is because the seaside aquifer got us through the last drought, and it's down about 50%. If it goes down much more, it could get saltwater intrusion, and that would ruin our seaside aquifer.
Right.
Cal-Am has said once the plant is built, it'll take them 3 years to replenish that aquifer. So that's 6 years away. I just pray that we won't have another drought in the next 6 years.
Right.
So I really want to make sure that desal gets online before we have another drought. So our water solution is a three-legged stool. It's taking overages out of the Carmel River and injecting that in the seaside aquifer. Now it's recycled sewer water that's being recycled and put in the seaside aquifer, and then the desalination plant. The recycled water and the aquifer storage and recovery aren't drought proof.
Of course.
So there is no overage on the Carmel River if there's a drought. And when there's a drought, we use less water, so there's less water in the sewer system to come back. Right. So the desalination plant is the only source that will be a constant flow of water to take us through whatever times we go through in the future.
So again, educating our viewers,
yes.
Where is the desal plant? How far has it come along? And is there more than one at this point?
There are actually 3 desalination plants in process.
Right.
But the Cal-Am plant in Marina is the closest to approval. It just got PUC approval to go forward. They've already had a slant well under the ocean, taking water, being tested as a viable way of collecting the water without harming the environment. And at first I thought, wow, that's a really expensive way to get water. But I talked to one of the engineers, he said, it's not that bad, because if you just have a pipe in the ocean, you almost need 2 plants. One plant to clean the water, all the stuff out of the water before it goes to get desalinated. So by going under the ocean to get the water, you don't even need that second cleaning plant. So it actually saves money. So I was surprised by that.
And where are the other 2 desal plants?
In Moss Landing. Nadaraga has an old plant that he bought there that has some wells in the harbor. And he's kind of stalled at this time, I believe. And then there's Deepwater Desal that was going to put a pipe in the ocean so far down that it wouldn't harm a lot of ocean life.
Right.
And that was going to cool off a cloud base, all the servers, and then get desalinated. They unfortunately have kind of come to a stop because they ran out of money. So they're looking for funding sources to get them back online. The one thing about the water out there is we would have to create a pipeline to the peninsula, and that would be fairly expensive as well. So having a plant in Marina gives us closer to our mains and a little bit of cost savings for piping.
Right, so say the plant goes in Marina. Dean, how long a process would that be before that's literally, I've got water in my tap, say out in Carmel Valley? What's that time frame realistically, do you think?
Well, supposedly by the end of 2021.
Okay, so we'll make that at least 2022, right?
Yeah.
Conservatively speaking.
Yeah, I mean, everything takes longer around here.
Of course.
They're supposed to start construction sometime in 2019.
Okay.
So if they can get this construction started in 2019, they'll be online by 2021. They still have 7 more wells to drill. So it's going to take 7 wells going under the ocean, the slant wells, and 5 will get enough water to run the plant, and 2 will be alternates. So they can
So describe
alternate.
what a slant well is.
basically, when you think of a well for drinking water, you go straight down to the aquifer and then you pump it out.
Right.
This is a well that goes out down at about a 15-degree angle from the land under the sea, and gets the water as the water is percolating down into the dirt and going through that in to get to the aquifers under land, because the land basically purifies the water. So they're going under and getting the water as it's first coming through the ocean.
So these slant well pipes are not actually going into the ocean.
No, they're under the ocean.
I think that's a real misconception that a lot of us have.
Well, and that's why you don't need the second plant to clean the water, because you're just getting water and sort of dirt.
Right.
They've got a process to kind of filter out most of the sand and stuff, but you're not getting eggs and fish and debris and things like that.
And also affecting the marine life and so forth.
The sanctuary.
That way. I want to make sure people have an opportunity to reach out to you. Please tell us how people could reach you for questions or so forth. Please tell us.
Well, I've got a cell phone just like everybody else.
Give us the number.
831-277-8622. I have a Facebook page, Dean Provence for Water District.
Okay. So how can people help you if they agree with you or disagree with you? How can they have conversations with you?
Call me, hit me up on Facebook. Okay. I have a website as well, but mainly Facebook and a phone call.
Yeah.
The other thing about the desal plant is that it's the right thing to do for the environment for Carmel River, because we have to get off the Carmel River. It hasn't flowed in year-round for years.
Absolutely right.
It's the best thing for the Carmel River and the seaside aquifer, and to protect us from the next drought. So that's why I'm passionate about the desal plant. And personally, I don't care who owns it. If Jay passes and it's feasible, let's go.
Right.
But I think the main thing is to keep our eye on the ball and get the desalination plant built.
Well, and what I like about, just to wrap up, what I like about what you're saying, Dean, is you're looking big picture. And that's really what all of us who live and love this peninsula, I think, should be looking at personally.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you're doing that. And I hope that people will reach out as a result of seeing this. You've answered a lot of questions very, very well. And I think there are a lot more questions. So if you make yourself available for people, I think that will go a long way in making some changes.
Well, and I'll be knocking on doors out in Seaside, so and making phone calls. So
and specifically in Seaside is where you're...
Yeah, my district is basically above Noche Buena all the way out to Seaside Highlands.
Right. Great. Dean, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. I have a lot more questions, but I can ask you offline because I know how to find you.
You do.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us on this program. I think it's extremely important to follow up with these candidates who really are impacting our lives. They do make a difference. So reach out to Dean, and thank you for watching. See you again.